Hey guys, have you ever felt afraid of something even though you know it's maybe a little bit irrational? I'm not talking about snakes or accidents or other things that are in fact dangerous, and so a level of fear towards them is probably healthy. I'm talking about things we deal with on a daily basis, like household items that the average person wouldn't for 1 second feel threatened by, but can strike you with immediate and intense anxiety. Maybe you have a perfectly valid reason, but the thing you're afraid of feels embarrassing to admit out loud. Well, you're definitely not alone. Millions of people around the world have phobias, mild to severe, for all types of things. For as long as I can remember, I've had a weird phobia of throwing up, and I will do just about anything to avoid it happening. It's just something I don't think I can handle. And on a less severe scale, I would say I have a slight phobia of walking underneath a tree full of birds, because I'm sure they'll poop on me. There's a street near my house lined with these big trees, and of an afternoon they fill up with birds. I guess they sleep there. The pavement is covered with their droppings, so I know it's happening frequently, and I will avoid walking that street whenever possible. But if I can't, it's like I brace myself the entire time, just waiting for it, even though it hasn't happened yet. Anyway, these are maybe not even the weirdest phobias out there, but I thought I would delve into them a bit and look up some of the more unusual phobias. This isn't meant in a judgmental way. Instead, I just find it interesting the things people can be afraid of and how exactly those fears came to be. Like, I'm sure there's someone out there who's afraid that every time they open their front door, there will be a chicken standing there, and the thought gives them goosebumps. It doesn't ruin their whole day or anything, but every time they open their front door, they brace themselves too. And you'd never know it about this person unless they told you. But they're probably too embarrassed to admit it. Like, how do you feel when you see this image of peanut butter? If you're like me, you probably just want to eat it because it's your favorite food. But for some people, peanut butter is a really big problem. Which brings us to the first on the list of bizarre, but real, but rare phobias. And please forgive my pronunciation of some of these names ahead of time. I'll do my best. Arachibutyrophobia is the fear of peanut butter sticking to the roof of your mouth and choking. People with this phobia can feel intense anxiety just being around peanut butter, which can make it even more difficult for them to swallow their food, just making their condition worse, even though they likely know the odds of choking on it are very low. It could be rooted in a general fear of choking, which researchers say is most likely caused after a previous experience with choking on food. Anthophobia, the fear of flowers. People with this phobia can have a fear of all flowers or a specific type of flower, like sunflowers, and will go to great lengths to avoid them. It likely originates from a traumatic event involving flowers. It could be a sting from an insect, especially if a person is allergic to that insect, or it could be a negative association between flowers and the loss of loved ones, or it could be related to allergies caused by flowers, which all sound like perfectly valid reasons to dislike flowers, but people who have a high level of anxiety are considered phobic and will likely need some help dealing with it. Botanophobia, which is the fear of plants or herbs, is closely linked to Anthophobia. Actress Christina Ricci once told British Esquire that she was repulsed by houseplants because they're dirty and it freaks her out to touch one. In the same article, she spoke about her other unusual phobias, some of which are included in this video. Barophobia, the fear of gravity and falling, but it's not quite the same as the fear of falling from high places. Barophobes have concerns about the potential dangers of gravity. They feel powerless over it. What would happen to them if it ceased to exist all of a sudden? What would happen to the world? Conversely, if the pull of gravity was to become stronger, what heavy objects around them could fall and crush them? Anxiety can be triggered by stairs, escalators, elevators, and theme park rides. It can originate from falling accidents in childhood or just by imagining the damaging effects of the force of gravity. And considering we can never really get away from it, this would be a difficult phobia to live with. Bibliophobia is the fear of books. This can be a fear of all books in general, perhaps caused by a person's negative experiences with reading, maybe because of learning disabilities, or reading out loud and feeling humiliated, and the associated lack of control creates an aversion to all books. It could also be the stories and content in specific books, which a person might view as scary or dark. For instance, Harry Potter or any book that includes witchcraft and magic could create intense anxiety for someone. Whatever the case, people with this phobia avoid libraries and books and reading books. Different sources of reading may be okay for them though, like websites and Kindles. Otherwise, there's a world of information unavailable to a person with this phobia. Koumpounophobia, the fear of buttons. Like with most phobias, the experience differs for each individual. Some fear the buttons are dirty, others may fear inhaling them, and others have had the painful experience of one being stuck in their nose as a child. For some, it's the texture that repulses them. As one Reddit user explained, they were most repulsed by plastic buttons like on button-up shirts and the bottom of duvet covers, but metal ones on jeans were okay. And they couldn't identify exactly when the phobia started. They just remember always feeling that way, although they did recount getting one stuck in their hair as a child, which could have started the negative association. Interestingly, Steve Jobs is said to have had this phobia, which seemingly extended to computer buttons. Could that explain his love of turtlenecks as well as touch screens and button-free mouses? Chionophobia is the fear of snow, with the primary fears being stranded in the snow and shut in or barricaded by snow. When there's a forecast of a snowstorm, most people will take the necessary precautions to prevent these things happening. But for a rare few, the news of a snowstorm triggers major panic and anxiety and feelings of doom and dread. While others are out enjoying the snow day, chionophobes refuse to step outdoors. They may fear what's potentially hidden in the snow, like chemicals, germs, or sharp objects. And snow leads to icy conditions, which means slippery walkways, hazardous driving conditions, planes can't land or take off safely, and rain turns to sleet. Any of which could have caused negative experiences for someone, which later develops into a full-blown snow phobia. Genuphobia, a fear of knees. In the US, 6 to 7 million knee injuries can occur in a 10-year period. And unfortunately, just a single traumatic injury, even long after it's healed, can lead to an everlasting phobia, where knees are seen as excessively fragile and delicate joints. Culture can also be to blame. When there are restrictions on exposing the knees, particularly of women, people may begin to think of knees as repulsive and vulgar just because they are unaccustomed to them. Body dysmorphia can also create such ruminating thoughts and obsessive fixations, and the more the individual focuses on the knees, the more distorted and disgusting they appear. Spectrophobia, the fear of mirrors. For most of us, mirrors are an integral part of our daily routines, and living without them would be incredibly difficult. But some people fear the image reflected back at them, and even reflective surfaces like glass or metal can cause problems. There are certainly enough superstitions around mirrors to cause people discomfort, such as ghosts and popular tales of mirrors being used as portals for the supernatural. Or what about the 7 years bad luck you'll receive from breaking a mirror? And as a child seeking cheap thrills, you've probably tried repeating the name Bloody Mary in front of a mirror at some stage. Come to think of it, mirrors are kind of creepy. But for those with this phobia, it's not just these superstitions they're worried about. Actress Christina Ricci battled an eating disorder when she was younger, and she couldn't stand seeing herself in a mirror. For years, she covered all the mirrors in her house and wouldn't dare have one in her room. Trypophobia is the fear of clusters of small holes and bumps. I have a friend who has this. She'll get goosebumps at the sight of these small clusters, which is ironic because goosebumps themselves create small bumps on the skin. Triggers can come from anywhere, be it food like crumpets and chicken skin, clothing, plants, or furniture. The cause of this phobia could be explained by researchers at the University of Essex, who hypothesized that for most of human existence, clusters of small holes and bumps were associated with alarming occurrences like skin rashes and mold spores. So this phobia may not be so strange after all. Chaetophobia, the fear of hair. This is likely caused by the belief that hair is dirty, so it's more like a repulsion to hair. This can include their own hair, other people's hair, and animal hair. It can be hair on someone's head or loose hairs on the floor, in a shower, for instance. Nobody likes someone's loose hair in their food, that's for sure. Others have described an aversion to sprouting hair like fresh beard growing through. I once worked with a girl who couldn't stand little hairballs that would get trapped in freshly washed linens. It can be more common in people who are obsessed with hygiene and cleanliness and may already experience symptoms of OCD. But it could also be linked to a traumatic experience with a hairy person, and so a conditioned phobic response is triggered by other people with a lot of hair. Hippopotomonstroses quipoedaliophobia, the fear of long words. Well, someone definitely had fun naming this phobia. I feared just having to say that one out loud. In fact, I don't even think I like trying to read it. This is a type of social phobia caused by the fear of being mocked and embarrassed when trying to pronounce long words. However, the fear becomes disproportionate to the social situation. Many of us may not like attempting a word like this, but we may find some amusement with it, whereas a person with this phobia will feel intense anxiety and may feel distressed over anything academic and avoid reading anything in public, just in case they come across a big word that would surely cause them to panic. Deipnophobia, fear of dining with others. I had forgotten until now that I used to experience this as a child. I would immediately lose my appetite at the dinner table, but would comfortably eat alone an hour or so later when everyone else was finished. And it was especially worse when I would be at a friend's house. I'm not exactly sure what caused it, but I have a theory. Because my parents could be kind of strict with food and they would force my brothers and I to eat a certain amount of food on our plates. And considering I already suffered from other phobias, including social anxiety, and anxiety can make you feel sick, that just made it harder to eat when I wasn't hungry. So it was a vicious cycle that turned into me dreading the dinner table under the watchful eyes of my parents or my friends' parents. Dinner felt like this big, stressful event that I would rather eat somewhere else alone where I could feel more relaxed. Optophobia, the fear of opening your eyes. Now, haven't we all experienced this at least once in our lives? It's the middle of the night and you hear a noise right beside your bed and you're laying there terrified, too scared to open your eyes in case someone or something is standing right there. We close our eyes during scary movies or when we see something repulsive. It's a natural reaction that provides us with some relief from whatever's happening in front of us. So we can understand to a certain extent someone with this phobia, except that they're experiencing this on a daily basis when there's no discernible triggers around them. Octophobes must constantly struggle with the what if, because there are things they just don't want to see, and they're convinced they will once they open their eyes. A very complicated phobia to live with, that's for sure. That's all I have for you in this video, but this list is by no means complete. there are a lot more unusual phobias out there. But hopefully it's made you feel a little less alone, knowing that many of us experience these irrational fears. At first glance, these phobias might sound senseless or unbelievable, but after looking into them, it's easier to understand them, because there are usually valid reasons behind the fears developing, even if we don't understand the extreme nature of the fear. Thanks for watching, guys. And if you're feeling brave, let us know in the comments any unusual things you're afraid of.